Rocky, what do you think? Is it time to talk about power meters? Or are you too busy? You know? Alright, well, I'll talk about power meters. You keep playing. So, Coach Ryan here. If you've followed me for any length of time, you've seen one of my posts about power meters. All kinds. It's all over Instagram. It's all over the internet. All kinds of good stuff. So, what I want to do is I want to take you downstairs. Yes. We have 3 kids. We have a cat. We have a dog. We have a hedgehog. We've got a messy basement. It's just me being real because I'm not about being fake. But here's the pain cave. That's the 3-year-old's trainer bike. So she could do rides with me in the mornings sometimes. So, very fun. But I wanted to show you, we're talking about power meters. So, personally, I've got Garmin Vector 3 power meter. But conveniently, I've also got an H2 from Ceres, formerly Cyclops. So, both give you power readings for when you're spending time on Zwift. But power meters standalone on your bike is what you kind of need when you're outside doing training rides or races or anything like that. So, the smart trainers are good for power readings. But if you're only using it for training and you're outside, you don't really know what you're doing unless you've got, a power meter. And there's lots that come as hubs. I don't have one on the race wheels. They can come in hubs. They can come as crank arms for your bikes. There's several different brands out there, but personally I like the pedals because you can push them back and forth on bikes. But basically this is going to be the tips. I'm going to do a little Facebook Live of things to consider when you're looking at power meters. So are you going to do your indoor trainer? And does it already have one? So if you've got a smart trainer, more than likely you've got a power meter associated with it. So if you've already got one and you're not really interested in using it outside and you just want to use it for training, there's no real reason to have a power meter unless you've got, plenty of disposable income and it's no big problem, and go out and get one and hook it up. Then I say go for it. More power to you. The other question is, will you train and race with power? So that goes to, if you're going to train with it, then it behooves you to kind of know where your power is during a race. So if you don't have a power meter on your bike somewhere, whether it be pedals, crank arm, or a hub on the rear wheel, then you have really no idea, and you're kind of resorting back to perceived effort and heart rate to kind of keep track of where you're at during a race. So I do, especially when you're doing the 70.3, 140.6, that's where it becomes pretty important to know where your power is at. Because you can see it, you can see if it's trailing off, your perceived effort versus what you're actually putting out if you're trailing off, or if you're powering through hills and, you kind of, well, that was kind of hard, but you look down on your power and you're going to 450 watts to go over a hill and you're spending, 90 seconds in that area, then you're burning your matches way too quick. So having a power meter during a race is definitely very beneficial if you're going to train that way too. So do you ride mostly indoor or outdoors? If you don't have the disposable income and price is a big factor to you, then, if you're going to spend, I'm probably 85% of my time indoors. I just don't ride outside early mornings. I'm too worried about people driving their cars and not paying attention. Usually my long rides are outside. Weekends are a little bit less crazy around here. I do not ride out after work. Just too many cars and too many jerks out there. Nothing personal, but anybody listening to this page probably is on the same boat with me. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there that just don't care. So, if you're going to spend most of your time indoor and you have a smart trainer, then you're good to go. But if you do have like a fluid trainer, like over here on my wife's bike, and you got a power meter you can hook to the pedal, or your hub or crank arm or whatever you're going to use, then, you can run all the fancy programs and have your power readings. So that's nice to have. The next point is, do you like data? So if you're not interested in data, you don't like numbers, having a power meter is kind of pointless. Because you're going to get numbers, you're going to get power, you're going to get watts, you're going to get watts per kilogram, all kinds of helpful information. But if you don't really care about the numbers, but if you have a coach that cares about the numbers, then that'd be beneficial as well. So just make sure you care about the numbers. Otherwise, it's kind of pointless. The next tip, do you go by perceived rate of exertion or heart rate driven in your training? If you do, and power is just kind of inconsequential, then it's really not for you. save your money and invest it on something else like, tri suits, aero helmets, aero wheels, whatever. There's tons of other things to be spending your money on if you're not really interested in power. The next point is, do you have the money? They're not cheap. I found instances where I've gotten discounts and stuff through either friends or other places, or bought stuff used. So unfortunately, power meters are not cheap. So if you're going to get them, just be prepared. Do your homework. Some are cheaper than others, and you kind of get what you pay for. Do you have more than one bike? N plus one. If something goes wrong, buy a new bike, right? So I've got a road bike. I've got a tri bike. So personally, I like to be able to switch in between bikes, and especially if you send one to a race, tri bike transport or something like that, take your pedals off. If you're riding another bike until you get to race day, if you want to know your power, and you don't have a smart trainer to do your training rides, then having those pedals to just switch between bikes, and then you just put them on, set your crank arm length, and calibrate them, you're good to go. So just make sure, when you're thinking about power meters, if you're going with crank arm, it's not very easy to switch between bikes. You can switch hubs, but if you get them on your race wheels, you may not want to be using them on the road, non-race time, or if you've got your race wheels, you've got your training wheels, and they've all got power meters on the hubs, and hey, that's great. So just be prepared that if you have more than one bike, maybe have a feasible solution to get between bikes. And the last point I was bringing up is, do you understand power? So it's one thing, it's kind of historical data and information. So if you've got power readings and you're looking through normalized power, nominal power, average power, max power, all this other stuff, do you really know and understand what you're getting out of that data? Do you really know your targets? Do you really know your goals? A lot of times athletes get into power, and it kind of goes to one of my points. If you're a numbers geek and you're really into it, then you'll be all over it. But if you're not really into the numbers, but you kind of like to have the data, but you don't really understand what it is, you're going to spend a little bit of time. I've read several books on it personally, and you're going to spend a lot of time. Training Peaks has a whole certification process for power. So it's somewhat complicated information, and you just need to make sure you understand it if you don't have someone on your side kind of going through all the data and stuff. So just make sure that you've considered those points when you're looking at power meters, because it's nice to have, but if you don't have disposable income to cover it, it's really not per se a necessity unless you're geared up and ready for it, and you're ready to do your homework and make it as useful as possible. So that was kind of my Facebook Live tip of the week. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Follow up, send me messages, ask me questions, and we'll talk to you guys later.